When Rush announced that German drummer Anika Nilles would be joining Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson for the band's 50-something tour, fans immediately started asking the same question: how do you replace Neil Peart? The short answer is, you don't. Neil Peart wasn't just Rush's drummer. He was one of the most influential drummers in rock history. His technical precision, complex compositions, and signature drum parts became a major part of the band's identity. Even decades after songs like Tom Sawyer, YYZ, and 2001-2 were released, drummers around the world still study his performances. AT6 performances. Rio +1. That's exactly why Anika Nilles never tried to become the next Neil Peart. Instead, she chose a different path. According to Geddy Lee, one reason Rush selected Nilles was because she brought something fresh to the music rather than simply copying what came before. Guitar player, and that leads us to the one thing Anika does differently than Neil Peart. She approaches Rush's music as an interpreter, not a recreator. Neil wrote many of those legendary drum parts from the ground up. Anika's challenge is different. She has to honor those iconic performances while also bringing her own musical voice to the stage. That balance has become one of the most fascinating parts of Rush's return. To understand why Anika Nilles sounds different from Neil Peart, you first have to look at where each drummer came from. Neil Peart built his reputation in progressive rock. His playing was heavily influenced by drummers like Keith Moon, John Bonham, and Buddy Rich. Over time, he blended rock power with jazz-inspired complexity, creating the signature style Rush fans came to know and love. Anika Nilles came from a different world. Long before joining Rush, she gained international attention through viral drum videos that showcased her mastery of modern fusion, funk, and odd-time grooves. Her performances demonstrated incredible independence between her hands and feet. But what stood out most was her feel. Instead of focusing solely on power and precision, she often emphasized groove, flow, and subtle rhythmic movement. That difference may sound small, but it changes everything. Neil Peart often approached songs like an architect. Every fill, accent, and transition felt carefully designed to serve the composition. His drumming helped build the structure of a Rush song. Anika, on the other hand, often approaches rhythm more like a conversation. She lets grooves breathe and allows small rhythmic details to create movement within the music. Even when she plays Neil's parts accurately, listeners can hear traces of her own musical personality. This is exactly what many fans noticed during her early performances with Rush. The notes were there, the famous fills were there, but the feel was uniquely Anika. Rather than sounding like a copy of Neil Peart, she sounded like a world-class drummer, paying tribute to him while still being herself. When many legendary bands replace a member, the goal is often simple: find someone who can reproduce the original performance as closely as possible. Rush took a different approach. After the passing of Neil Peart in 2020, fans naturally wondered whether anyone could ever sit behind that famous drum kit. The reality was that Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson weren't looking for a copy of Neil. They knew that such a person doesn't exist. Instead, they wanted a drummer who could respect the music while bringing something authentic to the stage. That made Anika Nilles a perfect fit. For years, Anika had built a reputation as one of the most innovative drummers in modern music. Her online performances attracted millions of views because she combined technical mastery with creativity. She wasn't known for imitating other drummers. She was known for having her own voice. That's exactly what Rush needed. Think about it from the audience's perspective. If someone tried to copy Neil Peart note for note, fans would spend the entire show comparing every fill and every drum break to the original. The performance would become a test rather than a celebration. Anika changed that dynamic. By staying true to herself, she shifted the focus back to the music. Fans could appreciate the classic Rush songs while also experiencing something new. The spirit of Neil's drumming remained intact, but the performance felt alive instead of frozen in time. Many musicians believe that's actually the best way to honor a legend. Rather than treating the music like a museum piece, they keep it evolving while respecting its history. And that brings us to another major difference between Anika and Neil: how they handle improvisation and spontaneous moments on stage. One of the most interesting differences between Anika Nilles and Neil Peart comes down to how they approach live performance. Neil Peart was famous for preparation. Throughout Rush's career, he spent countless hours perfecting every detail of his parts. His live performances were remarkably consistent from night to night. Fans could attend multiple shows and hear many of the same fills, accents, and transitions executed with incredible precision. That level of discipline became one of his trademarks. Anika Nilles operates with a slightly different mindset. Like Neil, she values accuracy and professionalism, but her background in fusion and modern groove-based music has also taught her to embrace spontaneity. She's comfortable making subtle adjustments in real time, responding to the energy of the band and the audience. That doesn't mean she's rewriting Rush songs on stage. Far from it. The iconic drum parts that fans expect are still there. The famous fills, intricate patterns, and challenging arrangements remain recognizable. The difference is found in the tiny details, small variations in dynamics, feel, and phrasing that make each performance unique. Musicians often describe this as playing in the moment. For Anika, the goal isn't just to reproduce a recording, it's to create a living performance that feels fresh every night. That's something many modern drummers strive for, especially those with backgrounds in jazz and fusion. Interestingly, this approach can make even familiar songs feel different. A slight change in how a groove breathes or how a transition is phrased can give a classic track new energy without altering its identity. Fans who have listened closely during recent performances have noticed exactly that. They hear Rush's classic songs, but they also hear Anika's personality shining through. And that personality leads directly to perhaps the biggest difference of all: how each drummer thinks about creativity. If Neil Peart represented the gold standard of progressive rock drumming, then Anika Nilles represents something equally important: the evolution of modern drumming. The music world has changed dramatically since Rush first emerged in the 1970s. Back then, aspiring drummers learned primarily from records, live concerts, and music teachers. Today, drummers can study performances from around the world instantly through online platforms. Anika became one of the most recognizable drummers of this new generation by embracing that reality. Her viral performances introduced millions of viewers to a style that combines technical precision with groove-oriented creativity. Instead of focusing only on speed or complexity, she demonstrated how modern drummers could blend multiple influences into something unique. That's a major contrast to Neil Peart's era. Neil helped define progressive rock drumming. Anika grew up in a musical world where genres constantly overlap. Elements of jazz, funk, fusion, rock, and even electronic music can all influence a drummer's approach. As a result, her playing often feels more fluid and stylistically diverse. This doesn't make one drummer better than the other. In fact, it highlights why their differences are so valuable. Rush's music has always been about growth and exploration. Throughout their career, the band continually experimented with new sounds, technologies, and musical ideas. In many ways, choosing a drummer with her own identity follows that same tradition. Rather than trying to recreate the past exactly as it was, Anika helps carry the music forward. That's why many fans, who were initially skeptical, eventually changed their minds. They realized she wasn't there to replace Neil Peart. She was there to celebrate his work, while contributing her own perspective to the band's next chapter. And when you look closely, that may be the greatest tribute any musician can offer. The difference that makes all the difference. So after all the comparisons, debates, and discussions among Rush fans, what is the one thing Anika Nilles does differently than Neil Peart? She embraces interpretation over replication. That single difference explains everything. Neil Peart spent decades creating some of the most iconic drum parts in rock history. His playing was meticulous, innovative, and deeply connected to Rush's identity. No drummer can truly duplicate the experience of watching Neil perform the music he helped write and develop over 40 years. Anika understood that from the beginning. Instead of trying to become a copy of Neil Peart, she focused on becoming the best version of herself while honoring the music. She learned the parts, respected the arrangements, and preserved the spirit of the songs. but she also allowed her own musical personality to remain part of the performance. Ironically, that may be exactly what Neil would have appreciated. Throughout Rush's history, the band constantly pushed forward. They evolved their sound, experimented with new ideas, and challenged themselves as musicians. Standing still was never part of their philosophy. Growth was. That's why Anika's presence feels less like a replacement and more like a continuation of that tradition. She brings the technical skill necessary to perform some of the most demanding music in rock history. She brings a modern perspective shaped by today's drumming world. And perhaps most importantly, she brings authenticity. Fans don't hear a drummer pretending to be Neil Peart. They hear a world-class musician paying tribute to a legend while contributing something new. And that's the real story. The one thing Anika Nilles does differently than Neil Peart isn't a specific fill, groove, or technique. It's her willingness to interpret the music through her own artistic voice rather than simply recreating what came before. In the end, that's why so many fans have embraced her, not because she replaced Neil Peart, because nobody can, but because she respected his legacy enough not to imitate it. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe for more Rush content and news.